But if he had seen that these new successor forms of socialism in the late 20th century and early 21st century had simply led to other forms of oligarchical collectivism, might he not have repudiated socialism itself? The second question has to do with atheism. Orwell thought of himself as an agnostic rather than an atheist. That is to say, he didn't oppose belief in God so much as consider it no longer relevant in the 20th century. That is, he took the view that religious belief was a matter of psychological immaturity, and that the task was to grow up. That science was teaching us that so much of what we previously considered religion was no better than myth, and that the frontiers of science would continue to reveal just that, until finally the massive population would agree that belief in God is a childhood reverie from which we must grow out. Why then would so many conservatives admire this agnostic? Well, ironically, for the same kinds of reasons that they admired this dyed-in-the-wool democratic socialist. That is, they shared the same enemy. Just as Orwell fought above all against communism and Stalinism, and conservatives were willing in the 1950s and 60s to look aside from their differences and focus on their shared enemy, communism and Stalinism. So too were they willing to do so on religious questions. That is, Orwell may have opposed organized institutional religion. He may indeed have thought that belief in a church or in an immortal soul is a matter of psychological immaturity. However, what he and cultural conservatives shared was the conviction that once you have gotten rid of faith, what will fill the vacuum will typically be the urge for power. Because what faith and the belief in God do for the God-fearing, for the true believer, is inculcate humility. And if you get rid of the belief in immortality, in the infinitude of the human being, because he possesses a soul, what inevitably fills that vacuum is the omnipotent leader, der Führer, or Stalin himself. That is, the totalitarian impulse comes from destroying religion because these substitute religions, as ideologies, enter in their wake. And to that extent, what both Orwell and cultural conservatives were warning against was the specter of what happens when religion is not believed in. Orwell viewed it as a matter of intellectual integrity not to believe. But he nonetheless sounded the warning that what would likely happen would be the totalitarian specter arising within that vacuum. Conservatives, on the other hand, insisted that the will to believe, the capacity for faith, still is relevant, is necessary in the 20th century. And so, for them, the rival religions that had sprung up in the forms of ideology, communism, fascism, and their like, were competing with revealed religion and needed to be fought against on that basis. But notice, the shared enemy, once again, whether from the left in Orwell's case or from the right in the case of thinkers such as Russell Kerr, the enemy was the same. And what needed to be defended were the permanent things.
When we think of the permanent things, we think back through Russell Kirk all the way back to Edmund Burke, and they both being Englishmen. Or was Orwell ever on the record in terms of how he felt about the works of Edmund Burke?